There's one thing you should never light in the dark. A candle that doesn't shine, but shows the truth. Some say these candles reveal the future. Others say they summon whatever hides behind you. But everyone agrees on one thing. Once you see something in that flame, it never leaves you. Tonight, the first tell you two terrifying stories. Two cursed candles that showed visions no human should ever witness. And once those visions appeared, their shadows followed the living. Story Part 1. I should have never lit that candle, because the moment its flame flickered to life, it showed me a vision of myself screaming for help inside a room I had never seen before. When I first found the candle, it looked completely ordinary. Short, ivory-colored, wrapped in a thin, dusty cloth. I bought it from a street vendor who claimed it was old, older than the road you're standing on. He spoke with a shaky voice, and I remember thinking he was just trying to make a quick sale. But as I held it, something felt wrong. The wax was strangely cold, too cold, almost like it had been sitting inside a freezer. I left it on my shelf for weeks, until the night everything started falling apart. It was past midnight. The power in my apartment had been going out randomly for days, ever since the electrical system upstairs short-circuited. I had no flashlight. My phone was barely alive, so naturally I reached for the candle. The moment I lit it, the entire room seemed to inhale. The flame didn't burn normally. It rose in a tall, thin line, stretching upward like a spine. A faint hiss escaped it. Then the shadows on my walls began to move, even though I was perfectly still. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but then I saw something inside the flame. A shape, N-O-A-N image. A clear, almost photographic vision. It showed my bedroom, but not the one I was standing in. The room in the flame was wrecked, the furniture broken, the mirror shattered, and in the center, standing perfectly still, was me. Same clothes, same expression, except the version of me inside the candlelight had blood smeared over my mouth and eyes wide with terror. I dropped the candle, but the flame didn't go out. Instead, the vision grew clearer. The me inside the flame turned slowly, as if feeling watched, and then it looked directly at me. The flame crackled, and I heard something impossible, a faint whisper, coming from inside the light, in my own voice. It's coming. My apartment felt suddenly smaller, like the walls tightened around me. Every hair on my body stood up. I backed away, nearly tripping over a chair. I grabbed my keys and ran outside, leaving the candle burning on the table. But when I stepped into the hallway, the lights were flickering violently. The long corridor looked stretched, distorted, as if the building itself was warping. I tried to run for the stairs, but the hallway kept extending, getting longer and darker. My breaths turned sharp and shallow. I felt like I was trapped inside some looping nightmare. Then, without warning, the hallway lights abruptly stopped flickering, and every bulb turned off at the exact same moment. A door behind me creaked open. I didn't want to look. God, I didn't want to. But something made me slowly turn my head. It was my apartment door, wide open, and the candle inside was burning even brighter than before, so bright that the flame reached nearly a foot upward. The shadows around it wriggled like living things. And then I saw something new inside the flame, not the wrecked room anymore. This time, it showed the hallway I was standing in. And behind me, at the far end, a tall silhouette. The figure had no features, just a long, thin body shape, barely human. I spun around so fast I nearly twisted my ankle. Nothing was there. But when I looked back into the flame's vision, the figure was now only halfway down the hallway, walking toward me. Slow, deliberate. My chest tightened painfully. I felt a coldness spread down my spine, making my hands shake uncontrollably. I slammed my apartment door shut, locked it, then shoved a chair under the handle. I backed away, staring at the candle like it was a ticking bomb. The flame suddenly shrank. Then it spat out a tiny spark. The spark did not land on the table. It floated. It hovered an inch above the wax, growing brighter, expanding, until it formed a small glowing orb. Inside the orb, another vision appeared. It showed my front door, and something standing right outside it. A tall shadow pressed its head against the door, as if listening. My heartbeat was thundering in my ears. I slowly stepped back, my legs nearly collapsing beneath me. Then, in a single violent motion, the shadow in the vision raised a hand and slammed it against the door. The real door shook. Hard. The chair rattled across the floor. Another slam. The lock strained. I could hear breathing, deep, dry, ragged breathing, on the other side. The candle flame pulsed like a heartbeat. The shadows around the room crawled upward, filling the corners with pitch-black patches. "Stop. Please stop," I whispered, but as soon as I spoke, the thing outside the door stopped banging. Silence. I didn't know if that was better or worse. Then the candle began melting rapidly, the wax dripping down in thick layers, puddling unnaturally fast. The flame twisted, turning blue, then black. A low rumbling sound filled the room, like something underwater was trying to rise to the surface. Suddenly, every shadow in the room lifted off the wall and stretched toward the candle, as if being pulled into it. My own shadow yanked forward too. My body jerked as I felt something tugging at my feet, dragging me across the floor toward the flame. "No, no!" I screamed, clawing at the ground. My nails scraped the wood. My fingers left bloody trails, but the pull grew stronger. My shadow was being ripped from me. I felt it, disconnecting, peeling away like skin being torn off. I screamed again, loud enough to tear my throat. The candle's flame shot upward, swallowing the darkness, devouring every shadow in the room. And then, with a final violent burst, the flame went out. Darkness swallowed everything. I gasped, scrambling to my feet. I ran to the light switch and flipped it repeatedly. No power, no lights, only darkness and my own ragged breathing. I stumbled backward to the table. The candle was gone. Not melted. Gone. As if it never existed. I stood there shaking for several minutes before finally gathering the courage to grab my phone. I turned on the camera flashlight and scanned the room. No shadows were visible anywhere, even behind the furniture. My body didn't cast a shadow either. That's when it hit me. The candle had taken mine. Hours passed. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. Every time I blinked, I remembered the version of me inside the flame, the blood, the terror, the unnatural stillness, and the whisper in my own voice. "It's coming." Just before dawn, the power came back on. My apartment lit up, and that's when I finally saw something that made my stomach turn to ice. On the far wall, where my shadow should have been cast by the morning light, something else was there. A silhouette. Long, thin, distorted, standing perfectly still. And it wasn't copying my movements. It was waiting. Slowly, its head began to tilt upward toward me, as the familiar whisper crawled through the room, echoing from everywhere at once. "Time's up." Story Part 2. The first time the candle showed me a vision, it wasn't of ghosts or monsters. It was of my own death, in a place I had never been, surrounded by people I had never met. I didn't believe it at first. I should have, because everything that happened afterward proved one thing. The candle doesn't show possibilities. It shows inevitabilities. The candle came into my life on a day I wasn't even supposed to leave home. The power in the entire neighborhood had been flickering for hours. I decided to walk to a small antique shop 2 blocks away to look for a portable lamp. The old man who owned the place greeted me without lifting his head, as if he already knew I was coming. When I asked for a lamp, he didn't answer. Instead, he reached under the counter and placed a small wooden box in front of me. No words, just a box. Inside it was a single candle, dark gray, smooth, heavier than it looked. The wick was twisted like a tiny piece of bone. "How much?" I asked. His voice cracked like old wood. "It's not for light," he whispered. "It's for truth." I laughed, thinking he was trying to be dramatic. I paid him and left. That night, the electricity finally blacked out completely, and I made the biggest mistake of my life. I lit the candle. The flame rose instantly, silent, steady, unnaturally still, and then the room around me vanished. I was no longer in my bedroom. I was standing in a cold, unfamiliar hallway. White walls, bright lights, and a smell, clean, sharp, chemical. It looked like a hospital, but older, neglected. At the far end of the hallway, a group of nurses were rushing toward a room. Inside that room, someone was screaming. I recognized the voice. It was mine. I watched, frozen, as the nurses struggled to hold down a patient thrashing wildly on a bed. Fourth stands shook. Metal trays toppled. Something hit the wall with a sickening thud. The patient lifted his head for a split second. It was me. Bruised, bleeding, eyes wide with terror. Then the vision snapped away. The candle flickered. I stumbled backward, shaking. "This is a hallucination," I whispered. "I'm tired, that's all." But the flame bent sideways, pointing toward the door of my apartment, like a tiny finger, guiding me. I didn't want to open the door. My instinct screamed, "Don't." But curiosity, fear, whatever it was, forced me to. The hallway outside my apartment was dark, except for the emergency lights. And on the floor was something I almost stepped on. A patient bracelet. It had a name on it. My name. I dropped it instantly and slammed the door shut. But the candle kept burning, brighter now, the flame turning a sickly green. A new vision formed inside it. This time, I saw a morgue. Stainless steel, cold, silent. A body lay on a metal table, covered by a white sheet. I couldn't breathe. I didn't want to see the face. But the candle forced the vision closer, and when the sheet pulled itself back, I saw my own corpse. Pale, mouth slightly open, eyes frozen in shock. I fell to my knees. No, this isn't real. The flame crackled, almost like a laugh. Then, a knock on my front door. 3 slow, heavy knocks. I froze. My heart hammered so violently, I felt it in my throat. Another knock. This one harder. The candle's flame shot upward, stretching like a spine again, and the room trembled. The shadows around me began creeping toward the door. I took a step back. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then a voice, low, hoarse, familiar, whispered through the wood. "You can't hide from what's already happened." I froze. It was my voice. The candle flared again, and a final vision appeared, clearer than the others, almost real. A hospital bed, monitors beeping rapidly, nurses shouting, my body seizing violently, and then a flat line, a long, endless tone. My vision self died. The moment the heart monitor went still, the flame of the candle turned black. The room around me shook as everything shattered. Light bulbs, picture frames, even the air seemed to crack. My chest tightened, my vision blurred. I collapsed, clutching the floor. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then, silence. I opened my eyes. The candle was gone. Not melted, not burnt out, just gone. I lay on the floor for a long time, waiting to wake up, expecting someone to burst in, expecting something. But nothing happened. Eventually, I forced myself to stand. I walked to a mirror, and my blood ran cold. I had no reflection, only the room behind me. My hands trembled uncontrollably. I wasn't alive. I wasn't dead. I was something in between. The candle hadn't shown me the future. It had shown me the truth. I had already died, alone, hours ago, in the same apartment. I just hadn't realized it yet. And as I stared into the empty mirror, unable to see myself, unable to feel my heartbeat, a voice whispered behind me, soft, old, trembling. The candle never lies. It was the antique shop owner. I spun around, but the room was empty. Only the candle's wick lay on the floor, twisted, like a tiny piece of bone. The end.